There are roads you should never take at night. There are deep lakes that hide secrets never meant to be told. And there are campfires that glow in the darkness, but what sits beside you may not be human. Tonight, I will share with you 3 horrifying true encounters, experiences so chilling that those who lived through them wish they never had. If you've ever driven alone down an empty road, or heard an eerie sound rising from the depths of a lake, you might want to think twice before watching. This is 3 disturbing true terrifying encounters, and the question is, are you ready? They say you should never camp near Lake Minnetonka at night. That's what the old woman at the town bakery once told Ellie Tran when she was a child. There's a tall, thin figure that roams around here, she had whispered, glancing toward the forest. They call it the Watcher by the lake. People say it appears on nights when the moon is dim, standing in the distance, just watching. But if you shine a flashlight on it, it won't let you go. Ellie had laughed back then, thinking it was just another scary story. She never imagined that one day, she would live it. Now a high school senior in Minnesota, Ellie had invited 3 of her friends, Sam, Leah, and Owen, to camp out in her backyard near the lake. Her house was an old wooden cabin with a wide yard, surrounded by pine trees, and just beyond them, the water stretched into the night. With her parents' permission, they spent the evening playing ball, eating pizza, and setting up their tent before the sky went dark. A cold breeze swept through, carrying the scent of lake water and damp earth. As they sat around the flickering campfire, Owen shared a story he'd heard from his grandfather. People say the Watcher isn't human. Years ago, a group of campers vanished near the lake, leaving only empty tents behind. Since then, anyone who sees the tall figure in the woods knows something bad is coming. Leah shivered, but Ellie rolled her eyes. Probably just some fisherman making up ghost stories. And then, click. A small sound came from the lake. Like something had dropped into the water. Ellie grabbed her flashlight and swept it across the surface. Nothing. Just the faint shimmer of moonlight reflecting on the ripples. Probably just a fish, she muttered, though even she wasn't convinced. They chuckled nervously, but then Sam whispered, "I swear. I just saw something. Something tall, near those bushes in the woods." Ellie turned to look, but there was only darkness. Was it just her imagination? To shake off the unease, they decided to play hide-and-seek. Ellie was it. She leaned against the tent and counted to 50, eyes closed. When she opened them again, the campfire flickered, casting long shadows. And then, something was there. A shape. Faint. Near the tree line. It was too tall. Too still. Just standing there between the trees. Ellie blinked. And it was gone. She screamed, "Guys, get back here." Sam, Leah, and Owen rushed over, their faces pale. "I'm not sure," Ellie stammered, "but I swear, something was watching us." Her parents came outside with a flashlight, but found nothing, just faint footprints in the damp earth. Maybe human. Maybe not. They decided to call it a night and headed inside. But Ellie couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the feeling of unseen eyes still lingering. And then, tap. A soft knock at the window. Slow. Steady. As if something, or someone, was standing just outside. Waiting. People say that if you ever hear knocking near Lake Minnetonka, never answer. It's what the old fisherman told Ellie's dad when he bought the cabin. "The Watcher doesn't like being disturbed," the old man whispered, his hands trembling as he gripped his fishing rod. Once, a boy answered back. The next morning, his tent was empty. All that was left were footprints leading into the woods. No one ever found him again. Ellie never believed those stories as a kid. But after that night by the campfire, she couldn't shake the cold feeling crawling up her spine. After seeing the tall figure in the woods, Ellie and her friends, Sam, Leah, and Owen, refused to sleep outside in the tent. Ellie's parents checked the yard, saying there was nothing out there except the wind and a few faint footprints, probably their imagination. But Ellie knew she had seen something, even if only for a second. They huddled in the living room, trying to distract themselves with video games. Leah whispered, "Do you think it was really the Watcher?" Ellie shook her head. "Probably just some kids from town messing with us," but her voice wavered. That night, as her friends slept on the couch, Ellie lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. The knocking on her window hadn't stopped, soft, steady, like fingernails tapping on glass. She pulled the blanket over her head, but then she heard something else. A faint, wheezing whistle, like someone calling from far away. Ellie sat up, her heart hammering. She peeked through the curtain, looking into the yard. Fog from the lake had rolled in, swallowing the tent and the shore. And in the trees, she saw it again. The tall, thin figure standing among the pines. This time, it wasn't alone. Ellie swore she saw something move behind it. Another shadow, or was it changing shape? She blinked, and it was gone. Ellie ran to the living room and shook Sam awake. "I saw it again," she whispered, her voice trembling. Sam groggily mumbled, "You were dreaming." But then, they both heard it. The whistle. Closer this time, right outside the back door. Ellie flicked on the light and peered through the glass. No one was there. Just fog and shadows. But then, look at the table. Leah's panicked voice made Ellie turn. On the dining table, next to their pizza boxes, sat a small, damp piece of paper. The edges were soaked, as if it had been pulled straight from the lake. The ink had smudged, but one line remained strangely clear, as if someone had written it just moments ago. "Listen to me." Ellie froze. No one had put that there, the doors were locked, her parents were asleep upstairs. Owen whispered, but no one answered the whistle. Ellie shook her head. Didn't they? Was the sound even real? Or had it been in her head? The four of them curled up together on the couch, too afraid to move. Then, the whistling started again. This time, from the backyard. Right by the tent. Ellie glanced at the window. The figure was standing there, tall, motionless, staring. She couldn't see its face. Couldn't even be sure it had one. But she knew, it was waiting. She yanked the curtains shut, but the feeling didn't go away. The weight of unseen eyes pressing against her, even through the walls. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Or was that the sound of footsteps creeping closer? Ellie whispered to her friends, "Don't answer. Don't move. Don't do anything." But one thought wouldn't leave her mind. If the Watcher was really out there, what did it want? Ellie curled up on the couch, gripping Sam's hand tightly, her eyes locked on the fogged-up window overlooking Lake Minnetonka. The whistling had just sounded again, closer this time, clearer, as if someone were standing right outside their abandoned tent. After seeing the tall, thin figure and finding that damp piece of paper with the words, "Listen to me," none of them, Ellie, Sam, Leah, or Owen, dared to step outside again. Ellie whispered, "Don't answer," but she still felt it, an unseen presence pressing against the walls, watching, listening. Then came the knocking. Not from the window this time, but from the floor, right beneath them. Soft. Rhythmic. As if someone were tapping against the wooden planks from below. Ellie froze, staring down. The house had no basement, just dirt and concrete underneath. Leah shuddered. I heard my name." Ellie turned to her. "What?" Leah's voice was barely a breath. "The whistling. It called my name." Ellie strained to listen. And then she heard it, not just the whistling, but something underneath it. A voice. Low. warped. Repeating. Leah. Sam. Owen. Then it stopped. And one last name rang out, clearer than the rest. Ellie. She screamed, dropping the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, its beam sweeping up to the back door. Through the glass, the tall figure stood there. Closer than ever. Something shifted behind it, another shadow, or was it twisting, bending, changing shape? Ellie didn't dare look long enough to find out. She grabbed her friends and bolted upstairs, pounding on her parents' door. Her father jolted awake, grabbed a flashlight, and rushed outside. When he came back, he simply said, "There's no one out there. Probably just the wind." But Ellie saw the way he glanced toward the lake, his face tight with unease. Leah whispered, "My grandpa used to say, if you see the watcher, don't stare for too long." One kid did, and that night, the knocking never stopped. By morning, he was gone. No one ever found him. A chill crawled down Ellie's spine. They sat in the living room, wide-eyed, waiting. The whistling had stopped. But the knocking beneath the floor continued. Softer now. As if waiting. By morning, Ellie's parents called the police. Officers checked the yard, found a few faint footprints near the tent, but nothing conclusive. Probably just some kids messing around, they said before leaving. Ellie's friends went home, pale-faced and silent. She stayed behind, staring at the table. The paper that had been there? It was blank now. The ink had vanished, as if no words had ever been written at all. She still didn't know what was out there, whether it was the Watcher or just a cruel prank. But in the nights that followed, as she lay in bed, she still heard it. The soft knocking at her window. Steady. Patient. Like something, or someone, was still looking for her. She never answered. But every time the wind whispered through the lake, she could hear it. A faint, eerie whistle. Calling her name. Casey Harper stood on the old wooden dock, which creaked beneath her feet, staring at the shimmering surface of Lake Minnetonka under the full moon. She recalled a story an old boat repairman had told back in town, the kind of story locals didn't like to talk about. Back in the 19th century, a timber boat sank in this lake, the old man had whispered, his cloudy eyes dark with something unreadable. Every crew member vanished. No bodies were ever found. Ever since then, people have heard a hissing sound beneath the water, like a muffled scream, trapped below. They call it the hiss. If you ever hear it, don't go near the lake, it'll drag you down, just like it did them. At the time, Casey had laughed, thinking it was just another tall tale. But standing here now, she wasn't so sure. Casey and her two friends, Jenna and Tyler, were staying at Jenna's family's lakeside cabin for one last summer night before their senior year started. They'd played cards, eaten chips, and finally decided to step out onto the dock to admire the moon. A breeze swept through the pines, carrying the scent of lake water and something else, something faint, like the stale, earthy smell of rotting mud from the depths below. As they sat joking around, a soft hiss echoed across the water. It wasn't the wind. It sounded like someone exhaling just beneath the surface. Casey stood up, her heartbeat quickening. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Jenna shrugged. "Probably just fish." But Tyler murmured, "I heard it, like a hissing sound." Casey lifted her phone's flashlight and shined it across the lake. The beam flickered over the rippling water, but there was nothing there, just the moon's distorted reflection, wavering on the surface. They turned back toward the cabin, walking along the gravel path. As they passed a thick patch of bushes near the shore, Casey caught a glimpse of something. Not tall and thin, like the Watcher from other local legends, no. This was different. Short. Wet. Like something had just emerged from the water. Her heart pounded, a chilling sensation crawling down her spine, as if unseen eyes were watching her from the darkness. She blinked. And it was gone. "Did you see that?" she whispered to Tyler, her voice unsteady. He shook his head. "No. But I smelled something, like rotten mud." Back inside, they locked the doors and settled on the couch to watch a movie. Casey tried to shake off the unease, but she kept glancing toward the window. Fog had rolled in from the lake, swallowing the dock in a thick, ghostly haze. Then she heard it. A faint hissing sound. Not from the movie. From outside. Jenna chuckled. "You're imagining things." But the hiss suddenly grew louder, like a scream from beneath the water. Then silence. And a soft click. As if something had just tapped against the window. Yet, when they looked, there was nothing there. Just the fog. Thick and unmoving. A sharp tap against the window made Casey Harper jump, nearly spilling the bowl of chips in her lap. She was sitting on the couch with Jenna and Tyler inside the lakeside cabin near Lake Minnetonka, still shaken from the eerie hiss and the shadowy, drenched figure she'd glimpsed earlier at the dock. The sound, the one that had echoed like a scream beneath the water, still rang in her head. "What was that?" Jenna asked, her voice unsteady. Casey stood up, heart pounding, and looked toward the window. The thick fog from the lake had swallowed the dock from view. But on the glass, a streak of condensation had formed, long and uneven, like a wet hand had dragged down the outside. "It's just the wind," Jenna said quickly. But Casey shook her head. "Wind doesn't do that." She reached out and touched the streak. It was ice cold, and a faint, putrid smell of damp earth drifted in, like something wet had just passed through the room. Tyler's voice was barely above a whisper. "I hear something, like dripping water." Casey strained to listen. There it was. A soft, slow drip, drip, drip. Like someone had just stepped out of the lake and was standing somewhere inside the house. They turned on the kitchen lights and searched around, but the wooden floor was dry, no footprints, no signs of water. Then Tyler froze. "Do you smell that?" The foul stench of rotting mud was stronger now. Casey swallowed hard and yanked the curtains shut. "It's probably just some kids messing with us." But then, a hiss rang out, not distant, not from the lake. This time, it came from the front door. It sounded like someone breathing through a layer of water, just on the other side. Casey switched on the porch light and hesitantly peered through the peephole. Nothing. Just fog and shifting tree shadows. Then, the hiss deepened. And something else slipped through, a distorted, broken whisper. "Casey." She stumbled back, a cold wave of terror washing over her. It felt like something was right behind her. Jenna and Tyler rushed over. "What is it?" Casey's voice was barely audible. "It said my name." A memory surfaced, something the old woman at the town's general store had told her. The hiss isn't just a sound. If it calls your name, that means it's already chosen you. There was a fisherman once. He heard it call for him one night. The next morning, they found his boat drifting in the middle of the lake, empty. They huddled together on the couch, too afraid to look outside. Then Tyler pointed at the coffee table. "Look." A small, soaked piece of paper lay there, as if it had just been pulled from the water. The ink had smeared, but the words were still legible. "Come closer." The hiss returned. But this time, it came from beneath the floorboards. Like something was moving below the house. Casey felt the icy chill seep through the wood beneath her feet. There was no basement. No crawl space. Just solid ground. She whispered, "Don't answer. Don't do anything." But a single thought wouldn't leave her mind. If the hiss knew her name, what did it want from her? The hiss from beneath the floorboards grew louder, its chilling breath seeping through the wood like a whisper from the depths of Lake Minnetonka. Casey Harper shivered on the couch, gripping her head as she stared at the waterlogged note on the table. "Come closer." Her heart pounded. Jenna and Tyler huddled beside her, pale-faced after hearing the distorted voice calling her name from outside the door. "Why me?" Casey whispered. "I've never done anything to this lake." But then, a memory surfaced, one she had buried for years. She was 8 years old. Playing near the dock. The waves had pulled her under. She remembered the freezing water swallowing her whole, dragging her down. Her father had saved her at the last second. But she never forgot the feeling of unseen hands clinging to her ankles, refusing to let go. She shook her head, trying to push the thought away. The hiss deepened. Then, the voice came again. "Casey." This time, it wasn't outside. It was underneath her feet. Jenna screamed. "It knows your name." The floor grew colder, damp, even though there was no water in sight. Casey shot up, pulling her friends with her. "Upstairs. Now." They ran toward the kitchen, but just before reaching the stairs, Casey stopped. A small puddle had formed on the wooden floor. Dark water. No clear source. And the foul stench of decaying mud filled the air. They bolted up to Jenna's bedroom, slamming the door shut behind them. Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. "What does it want?" Casey didn't answer. But she remembered what the old boat repairman had once told her. The hiss doesn't just drown people. They say it looks for the ones who got away, like it's trying to take back what it lost. A cold shudder ran down her spine. If that was true, then this wasn't random. It had chosen her. But why now? The hiss echoed again, this time, from outside the bedroom window. Casey hesitated, then carefully pulled the curtain back. Fog smothered the lake. But on the dock, a shadow stood there. Short. Drenched. Motionless. Ripples spread out around its feet, yet it never moved. Something was shifting around it. Like the water itself was alive. Casey backed away. "Don't look at it." Jenna pointed at the door. "Listen." The sound of dripping water. Not from outside. From inside the room. Like something had just stepped in. Casey spun around. A puddle was forming beneath the bed. The hiss grew deeper, thick, gurgling, like a voice trying to rise from beneath the waves. Casey screamed, yanking her friends toward the door. She grabbed the handle, cold as ice. It wouldn't budge. The hiss sharpened, turning into a strangled, drowning cry. Then the voice came again, warped and broken. "Casey, come, closer." A low vibration spread beneath their feet, like something was pushing up from underneath. Casey pounded on the door, screaming for Jenna's parents. Footsteps. Then a light flicked on in the hallway. The bedroom door flew open. Jenna's parents stood there, groggy and confused. And downstairs? Silence. No hiss. No water. Nothing. Just the faint, lingering scent of rotting lake mud. Jenna's father checked the house, muttering something about their overactive imaginations. But Casey knew better. It had been here. And it wanted her. Sarah Lynn pressed the brake pedal, her headlights cutting through the narrow stretch of Route 13 as it wound through the pine forest near Lake Minnetonka. It was late, somewhere past midnight, on a foggy night in 2019. She had just left Minneapolis after a long day of auditing at the bank, heading back to visit her parents in a small town a few miles away. The mist from the lake had crept onto the road, swallowing the trees in thick, shifting shadows. She suddenly remembered something the old security guard at the bank had said when she mentioned her drive. "Don't take Route 13 at night. People say there's a drifter out there, the stranger on the road. If you see him, don't talk to him. Don't look at him too long. He'll never leave you alone." At the time, she had laughed it off as just another small-town ghost story. But now, as her car rolled to a stop, she wasn't so sure. A man stood in the middle of the road. Tall. Thin. Wearing an old coat and a faded baseball cap that hid most of his face. He raised a hand, signaling for a ride. Sarah hesitated. The night was cold, and she didn't have the heart to leave someone stranded in the middle of nowhere. She lowered her window. "Where are you headed?" The man smiled. His voice was deep. "Just into town. Name's Cal." Sarah nodded and unlocked the door. As Cal climbed in, the scent of damp wood and something else, something faintly like old smoke, filled the car. They drove in silence for a while. Then, Cal spoke. "You take this road often?" Sarah kept her eyes on the road. "Sometimes. When I visit my parents." He nodded, staring out the window. "It's a quiet road. But not always." His tone was light, almost casual, but something about the way his eyes glowed faintly beneath the shadow of his cap sent a chill down her spine. Then, without looking at her, he asked, "Have you ever heard someone call your name, from the woods?" Sarah stiffened. Her grip tightened on the wheel. "What?" Cal let out a soft chuckle. "Nothing. Just, sometimes, it gets the name wrong." She glanced at him. He was staring at her now. His fingers tapped against the seat in a slow, rhythmic pattern, like a beat only he could hear. Something about it felt wrong. They reached the town limits. Sarah pulled up near a gas station, forcing her voice to stay steady. "This is as far as I go." Cal stepped out. He turned back to her, smiling. "Thanks for the ride." "Sarah." She froze. She had never told him her name. Before she could say anything, he stepped around the side of the gas station, and disappeared into the mist. Sarah drove home, trying to convince herself it was nothing. Just a trick of the mind. But as she stepped into the house, her breath caught. A faint scent of old smoke lingered in the air. No one had used the fireplace. She turned toward the window. The fog had thickened outside, cloaking the street in white. And under the glow of a distant streetlight, a tall, thin figure stood perfectly still. Watching. Sarah Lynn unlocked her car, parked outside her parents' house, intending to grab her coat. She hadn't slept since giving Cal, the stranger from Route 13, a ride near Lake Minnetonka. It was late, the town eerily quiet, but as she opened the door, a faint scent of old smoke drifted out, as if someone had just burned damp wood inside. She frowned, scanning the interior. On the back seat, small traces of ash dotted the fabric. Sarah didn't smoke. No one had been in her car since Cal. "What the hell?" she muttered, rummaging through her bag for her house keys. Her fingers brushed against something cold. She pulled out a metal lighter, old, tarnished, and unfamiliar. When she flicked it open, a thin wisp of smoke curled into the air, carrying that same burnt scent, the exact one Cal had left behind. Sarah stepped inside the house, her heart pounding. She placed the lighter on the table, then flipped on the living room lights and checked the door, still locked. Everything seemed normal. Yet, as she passed through the kitchen, an unnatural chill swept over her, despite the heater running. A faint whisper, too distant to make out the words, brushed against her ears. Then, silence. A slow, deliberate knocking began. Not at the front door. At the window. Steady. Rhythmic. Like fingernails tapping against glass. Sarah called upstairs, her voice hushed but urgent. "Ethan. Come down here." Her younger brother, Ethan, stumbled down the steps, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" Sarah swallowed. "There's someone outside." She pointed to the lighter. "And I found this in my car. It's not mine." Ethan picked it up, frowning. A shiver ran through him. "Do you feel that? It's freezing." "And what's that smell, like something burning?" Sarah nodded. "It started after I picked up some guy last night." She told Ethan about Cal. How he somehow knew her name. Ethan's face darkened. "You never told anyone you were taking Route 13. Then, the knocking moved. Not at the window anymore. At the walls. Slow. Methodical. As if someone was circling the house, tapping as they went. The kitchen lights flickered. Neither of them moved. Ethan whispered, "Do you hear that? It's like someone talking." Sarah strained her ears. Beneath the knocking, beneath the hum of the heater, a low voice drifted through the air. "Sarah, you are a kind person." A pause. Then, in a softer, almost amused tone, "I'll remember you, forever." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him back. "It knows we're here." The knocking stopped. A dreadful stillness followed. Then Sarah made the mistake of looking out the kitchen window. Through the sheer curtain, standing beneath a towering pine tree in the yard. A tall, thin figure. Still as stone. A faded baseball cap shadowed his face. Something dark coiled around his feet, like wisps of smoke, shifting unnaturally across the ground. Sarah yanked the curtain shut, whispering, "Don't look. Don't answer." But even as she tried to steady her breathing, she couldn't shake the feeling. The lighter. The smell of smoke. The knocking. If Cal, or the stranger on Route 13, had left these traces behind, then what did he want from her? Sarah Lynn froze in the kitchen as the lights went out, plunging her and Ethan into darkness. Only the pale moonlight from the window remained. The knocking had stopped. The voice had not. "Sarah, you are a kind person. I will remember you, forever." Cal's lighter, the one left behind by the stranger on Route 13, still lay on the table, its cold metal reflecting the dim light. The thick scent of old smoke filled the room, as if damp wood had just been burned inside. Sarah whispered, "Ethan, turn on the lights." Ethan reached for the switch. A sudden chill washed over them. "It's not working," he murmured. Sarah grabbed her phone and flicked on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, sweeping over the kitchen. Near the ceiling, thin wisps of black smoke curled and twisted. Drifting from nowhere. Dissolving into nothing. Heart pounding, she grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him toward the stairs. "We need to wake Mom and Dad." They hurried up, but as they passed the hallway mirror, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her phone's glow illuminated their reflections, hers, Ethan's. And a third figure standing just behind them. Tall. Gaunt. A baseball cap shadowing its face. Its head tilted slightly to the side, as if watching them with quiet amusement. Sarah spun around. Nothing. But in the mirror, the figure remained. And from beneath it, black smoke began seeping across the glass, inching toward her reflection. She screamed. Grabbing Ethan, she bolted to their parents' room. The house burst to life, lights flickering back on, no trace of smoke, no knocking. Her father checked the house, shaking his head. "You two must have imagined it." Then he noticed the lighter on the table. Picking it up, he frowned. "This looks just like one a guy left behind years ago. I gave him a ride once. He disappeared right after." Sarah's stomach twisted. If that had been Cal, then he had been haunting more than just her. The next morning, Ethan checked Sarah's car. The ashes on the back seat were gone. But the smell of smoke lingered. Sarah made a decision. She wouldn't take Route 13 again. She'd stay in Minneapolis for a while. Back at the bank, she overheard a coworker whispering about the road. There was this driver once, she gave a stranger a ride to town. The next morning, they found her car abandoned in the woods. Completely empty. The only thing left behind was the scent of smoke. Sarah went cold. She had never told anyone about Cal. She never discovered who, or what, he was, or why he had chosen her. A few days later, the lighter vanished from the table, as if it had never existed. But every time Sarah drove near Lake Minnetonka, she still caught the faintest trace of smoke in the air. Even with the windows shut tight. And sometimes, in her rearview mirror, she glimpsed a tall, motionless figure standing far down the road. Waiting. She never stopped. But on the quietest nights, when the world fell silent, she still heard it. A soft, steady tapping. Like fingertips against glass. Persistent. Endless. As if someone was still remembering her. Forever. Some nightmares fade when you wake up. But some stay with you forever. Until next time, sleep tight, if you can. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Nightmare Vault for more chilling tales.